it's not Afghanistan where everything is warm and nice and cozy. Not that war is nice and cozy, but they're fighting the Russians. They're not fighting the Taliban. And I think this is why a lot of US hardware, especially in the beginning and probably still as of today, is not working, right? Because it was not made for that environment and was not made to take on Russians. It was made to attack Taliban positions.
This is Dan Magy, CEO of Firestorm, and this week on the Drone Wars podcast, we have Florian Seibel, CEO and co-founder of Quantum Systems, and his new loitering munition company, Stark. Florian, thanks for joining us today. Will you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you work on?
Yeah, absolutely. Great having me, Dan. I mean, it's these once in a while emails or like heads up you get on LinkedIn where you like, okay, I got to do this. And I've been a big fan of what you guys are doing. And obviously we're trying to do the same here in Quantum. So I think it's about time that we start talking here. And so I'm Florian. I'm one of the co-founders, CEO of Quantum Systems, 450 people company based out of Munich, headquartered. We do have a big subsidiary in Moore Park, north of LA. We have a facility in Australia and Kiev, which is big. I'm very excited about Kiev, but I guess we'll talk about that a little bit later. I have a history in aviation. So I started when I was 12 years old flying RC models. It got me into flying gliders, got me into the Army. I studied air and space engineering. And actually, I was trained as a helicopter pilot in Fort Rucker, Alabama. So I love the US. I love the relationship that I have with many Americans, and I think Europe and the US need to work together. And with Quantum, I get the chance to do that. So after I finished my career in the military for 15 years, I was there. I founded Quantum, and we struggled in the beginning. It was a dual-use company, not from the start. We started in agriculture. And mining and all of that. But, my roots are in defense. And so with what happened in Crimea in 2014, I think a lot of people not really noticed what was going on there. But a few years later, I thought this is not going where all of this should go. And so we made Quantum a dual use company. Here we go. I mean, it's probably 95% of our business is now defense.
Talk to us a little bit about what's it like to build a defense company in Europe and in Germany as well.
Well, when we started to raise money in 2017, so the first 2 years we bootstrapped, I had no idea or clue about venture capital. I had no idea what is a term sheet, what is a liquidation preference, none of that. And I almost fucked it up because our first investor actually was a strategic investor coming from the defense industry. And not that they wanted us to be unsuccessful, but in the end, they were limiting us in several ways. Culture, speed, how you approach things and learn fast, iterate. And so this is part of my strategy of how we do things at Quantum. And that just didn't work with them as a classical prime defense player. But then again, it was also a wake up call for me, and we had to break up, and there was a lot of shake up and noise in the company. But in the end, we were able to do it and solve it and make Quantum an investable company. So we brought Teal Capital and Project A, HV Capital. Porsche is one of our investors now. In total, we raised 160 million. Yeah. Little compared to US standards, but I think for Germany, for Europe, being a hardware centric company that also does a lot of software, I think we did quite well. And I'm super excited to see what's coming next now.
Yeah, and your systems are kind of deployed in some of the most important combat zones in Eastern Europe. Why don't we kind of pivot and talk about that a little bit, right? Ukraine's really important to your guys' mission. And I think I wrote this down that you said you have like a whatever it takes commitment to the country. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it gives me goosebumps here because we have basically have Ukrainians in our office on a weekly basis. We are traveling there on a monthly basis. Yeah, it was Dave Sharpen, actually, my US CEO, who was a senior vice president at AeroVironment before, but he got out of AV because he was just like unhappy with the speed and missing out on vertical takeoff and all of that. So that's how we met each other, because I was basically pitching to Wahid in 2018-19 to acquire us, and they were just not listening. And the only person in the room who got it was Dave Sharpen, actually. So when our paths crossed again, he was like, "Dude, we need to do this in the US. I'd be happy to be your US CEO." And so I made him the US CEO. And, if it was not for Dave, we probably would have missed a few months in Ukraine, because he was the first to really call me after the invasion, basically the second day or next day. And he said, "Flo, this is where we need to go. This is where it will happen." I probably would have missed out on that for a few more weeks or maybe months, because in Europe, everybody was in shock. But he was experienced enough, I would say, and has seen a lot in his defense and aviation history to know, yeah, and to do what was necessary. And that was basically fly to Poland and establish connections and see how we can get first units into Ukraine, which we did. So, I mean, don't ask how, but we made like a few units to go there and get them to Ukrainians. And we were doing quite well in the beginning. Russia did not anticipate that this would take longer than like 3 days, or let's say
Right.
3 weeks. So they did not bring any of these jammers and stuff to the front line. So they just had the classical equipment and artillery and tanks. And so we were quite successful in the first few weeks and months. So basically 0 failure. GPS perfect, and then they caught up, and then we had to learn the hard way. And I think the reason why we are still there today, and we have like 100 people in Kiev now, is because we went all in. We were ready to go there. We were ready to learn. I have seen so many companies claiming we are in Ukraine. I mean, literally. I mean, basically, they are not lying. I mean, if I ship a drone with FedEx to Ukraine, I can tell my investors we have a drone in Ukraine. Yeah, I'm not lying, but that's not really what it means to be deployed in Ukraine. And so we took that hard road, and I'm still part of some of these chat messenger groups on Signal, where we get like a ton of shit from our operators, like, "Hey, you got to fix this, you got to fix this," and da da da. And at one point I was like, "Oh no, I don't need this. I don't want this. This is really tiring." But we pulled through, right? We grew our team. We established a relationship with the team there. I have an excellent CEO who runs Ukraine operations. I fell in love with that country. No matter what it takes, we will be there. Obviously, we earn money there. We make money. We reinvest every single euro of it into it and back into it. I believe beyond the Ukraine war that hopefully ends at one point. I made lifetime friends there. We have a great subsidiary we intend to keep and build on top of that, because a lot of excellent people will come back from the front line, and I want to have all that feedback in my company and all that knowledge. And yeah, so that's where we are today. My day could have 48 hours, as you can imagine. Yeah, basically every day gets me excited because there's so much we should do as the West to help Ukraine defend itself. We have done too little, too late. Trump being president now and all of what that means now for Ukraine, nobody really knows. We have the Munich Security Conference coming up next week, or this week actually. There's a U.S. delegation with J.D. Vance, I assume, and I just hope that we do not miss out on this as a West to really make sure that Russia loses this. They have to lose this, because otherwise this is just a blueprint for Chinese taking Taiwan, and that's an even probably bigger problem for the US, for all of us. And so I think the world is at a turning point.
Drone Wars is recorded from Firestorm's global headquarters in San Diego, California. Each episode is filmed inside our X-Cell, a modular industrial-grade manufacturing facility designed to be deployed anywhere in the world within 24 hours for on-demand drone production. Each week on the podcast, we bring you cutting-edge insights from unmanned industry leaders. Listen as they share the breakthroughs and technologies they're working on, the hard lessons they've learned, and the bold predictions about what the next 5 to 10 years in unmanned systems and advanced manufacturing have in store for us. Enjoying the show so far? Then be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Now back to the show. Let's actually talk about how hard it is to fly a drone in Ukraine right now. Okay.
Right now it's February, so it's hard. It's cold, it's windy, it's night, so that is hard. Yes, there's no GPS. You actually even take off in GNSS denied navigation. You cannot even calibrate your system because there is no GPS on the ground. Yeah, but we have trained operators. I think this is where we really profited from Quantum being a commercially successful company, because the way we set up our architecture and the software was that when we started in 2015, a lot of the open source software, whether that was PX4 or Autopilot, was not so easy to use and operate, right? There were a lot of manual steps. There was no transition UAVs supported, and a lot of switches you had to flick in order to make the drone do something. And I told my guys and my co-founders, right, we need to get rid of any of these switches. We need to build the flying iPhone, because if we don't have a flying iPhone, we won't be successful. So I think in Ukraine, this really has paid off, because it kind of is like a flying iPhone now. Nobody's reading manuals anymore, right?
Yep.
Since DJI rules the space in commercial, you just expect your product to work, not to fall out of the sky. So because we have that experience and we learned that the hard way in commercial from 2016 to 2019, 2020, I think we started with some head start in Ukraine with our software, because we are able to basically train an operator in a matter of, like, let's say a few days versus like weeks or months that it takes them to be a fully qualified Puma or whatever operator,
Sure.
Switchblade, I don't know. So I think this is essential, and to really have an intuitive software that just works and does what it's supposed to do. Big icons, big buttons. This is like, it's cold, they have gloves, it's dark, it's not Afghanistan where everything is warm and nice and cozy. Not that war is nice and cozy, but they're fighting the Russians. They're not fighting the Taliban. And I think this is why a lot of US hardware, especially in the beginning and probably still as of today, is not working, right? Because it was not made for that environment, and was not made to take on Russians. It was made to attack Taliban positions, right. Probably. Yeah.
Global war on terror. They had GPS. You were in a very easy comms environment, and that's
batteries were warm. Yeah,
batteries were warm.
They don't freeze, and none of that. And so, I guess some of the US companies, but also some European companies, they really missed out on this chance of really learning in Ukraine, sending a ton of equipment, having very powerful BD relationships in Washington, made them get like multi-million, if not billion-dollar contracts on whatever switchblades and stuff that the Ukrainians deem useless. Yeah,
right.
Pretty much useless. And so this really hurts me because I have friends there now. I see how hard they're fighting, and that some of the Western drone companies use that as a marketing show is just morally wrong. Yeah, this is like not what you do.
So how much do you think the environment in Taiwan is going to mirror what we see in Eastern Europe?
I think, coming back out of Ukraine, then we're probably much better prepared for Taiwan. But then again, China is not Russia, right? So the Chinese, and we should not make the mistake of underestimating them. They're probably, I mean, look at what DJI is doing. So let's assume that they just, instead of producing white frames, they will produce them in green. Actually, they already do that. Angel Robotics, I think. But let's assume they make them camouflage. They can produce like tens and hundreds of thousands a month if they want, and they will. All right. So, so the even bigger question is probably how to deal with like huge swarms of drones that operate autonomously 2, 3, 4 years from now. So I have no idea, Dan, to be honest. Is it lasers? Is it shotguns? Is it EW? What is it? Is it a combination? Is it hide and seek? I don't know.
But you're going to assume that the EW environment, a coalition of allies would face with China, would be pretty similar to what we see in Russia, right? Because the lessons are learned are probably going to be shared.
Probably. I mean, Russia is known for excellent EW and spamming and spoofing. I think we just have not really found out in the last 30, 40 years. Everybody assumed it would be the case, but not how hard or bad it really is for us. Mm-hmm. I don't know if China is like really leading in that domain, but let's assume, like you said, they're gonna share their lessons learned. That's probably why China is supporting them.
Yep.
Also to learn. Yeah. So I think it needs more companies like Firestorm and Quantum and others to and get money. And I mean, there's a US company, Anduril, got a ton of money, is doing great stuff, but maybe they're also working on so many fields and on a much higher flight altitude that they might be missing out on some of the stuff that is happening down here. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, let's let that be a discussion. What's your thought on that? I mean, how can we solve that?
I think we need to broaden the industrial base, and I think we need to design systems where you can do rapid, modifications to it. I have, similar to you, I got a core group of pilots. A lot of them use your product and they love it. But they kind of tell me how often the fight is changing. And if we're building kind of locked pieces of hardware that are hard to mass produce, those are the two things, right? You got to build many and you got to build modular. And if you can do those two things, then you can build it cheap in the long run, right? Because the cost curve will come down. But, my thought is we need a vibrant defense industrial base. And it can't just be like 2 or 3 companies gobbling up all the contracts. We're going to need to have 10 to 20 companies that are big, that can build thousands of drones at a time. And we're going to have to collectively work together if we want to maintain kind of the order that is, made us all so prosperous for the last 70 or 80 years. That's kind of my thought.
Yeah, I agree. So especially on the industrial base, I think maybe Europe, I mean, we have lost some technology edge. I mean, AI and compute and chip fabs and all of that, solar industry, all of that went to China. But I think where Europe really is very strong is in like the mid caps that can produce stuff. So like turning an automotive manufacturing facility into a drone factory.
Yeah, we just saw that in France, right?
Yeah. So having companies on standby mode to ramp up production, like having artillery shell production facilities. We need that, yes. And then, like you said, software-defined defense means having hardware that is probably good enough for a few years, but you can update it we have like a 6 weeks software cycle at Quantum and Stark. So every 2 weeks there's a sprint, so 2 sprints, and then there's a release. And the release goes to Ukraine first, and then they test it. And then they make a decision, like 2 or 3 days, we release it or not. And I think this is what it takes to really make all these changes and to be ahead of the curve. And talking to German officials and the US is a little bit better, I would say, than the Germany. Or Australia, they're like, okay, we need to certify this. And then there's like an 18 months where you cannot change anything.
Sure.
Got to close all the connections, and over the air is like, they get a heart attack, and some education to be done there, I guess, with the stakeholders. Takes quite some talking and change of mind and mindset to convince them that this won't help them win the next war.
We need some sensible guidelines for like a human on the loop, but we also need to have like an unrestricted solution too, because if we don't have it, then we lose our deterrent capability.
You need to fail and in order to adopt and iterate and get better, but it should not be the customer who does that, right?
Thanks for listening to the Drone Wars podcast. Each week, we bring you fascinating conversations with leaders shaping the future of air, sea, land, and space technologies. Catch new episodes every Tuesday wherever podcasts can be found. Until then, we'll see you next time.